this is going to be long. It might even turn into 3 parts, but you want to watch every one of them because what we're unpacking are the dirty secrets of the financial services. And in this time, we're talking about why your 401k sucks. Now, in order to unpack this, we got to understand some basic things. First of all, you've got a timeline in front of you on your screen where you can see that we've got a 40-year-old person who has a job and income. So either a job with wages or they're a business owner and they have profit. In either case, we got a 40-year-old in our story today and they have money. And they have been indoctrinated into the belief system that all responsible adults should invest in their 401k. We're unpacking why the 401k sucks right now, but everybody knows that they should fund one. Now, what we have are these 2 different walls of shame in our little story here. Now, my office, shame is not in our vocabulary, but when something is shameful and something is wrong, we're going to call it what it is. So our first wall of shame, which is a Leannism, it's not a financial term. The wall of shame happens at age 59 and a half for all human beings in America. And then the second wall of shame is at age 75 for all human beings in America. And then out here, nobody knows when they're going to die. But when I'm doing financial planning for people, I kill everybody in my financial plan right around age 90. So we're going to kind of get through these different walls of shame and you're going to understand what they mean. So our 40-year-old is smart and savvy and working. So what happens is the 40-year-old is working and they are getting wages and they're used to paying taxes on their paycheck. And part of the way that that all works is if we put money into a 401k, it goes in before tax, which is why I say pre-tax down here. So the money goes in before tax. So basically that means that you don't pay tax yet on every single dollar that goes into that 401k. So that seems like a good idea. Now, I'm not saying it's not. I just want you to understand how this actually works. So we've got our 40-year-old and they are investing in what I call the max tax line. That is a Leannism. That is not a financial term. So the max tax line includes the investment vehicles like 401ks, 403bs, traditional IRAs, right? Traditional IRAs. And for those of you who are self-employed, we might find on here something like a simple plan or what we call a SEP. They're all the same thing. They're all the same thing. Those vehicles get funded prior to the tax being hit on the paycheck. And if you're self-employed, it actually helps serve as a tax deduction. More on that later. So money goes into this investment. And what happens is that we just do that on autopilot and we don't think about it. Totally cracks me up when people come in here and they're like, hey, Leanne, I want you to know I am maxing out my 401k every year. And I'm like, sorry, I'm going to change your mind in a few minutes. So once we understand how this works, we start to get unsettled and upset. So we have money going into this account. Now we got to understand some of the tenets of how investing works. We've got lots of content on that, but let me just quickly review. So basically there's the stock market, right? And the stock market does what the stock market does. So we are hoping that when we invest, what we're doing is we're investing in profitable companies that over time are going to pay us back with either increasing our equity positions or having profit in those positions, or if those companies are profitable, sometimes they send us dividend checks. All of that works together to grow the value of our 401k over time. And what we all know is that it's money for later, not for now. So the reason I call this first wall the wall of shame is it's at age 59 and a half. So if you put any money on that max tax line and you try to do anything with it prior to age 59 and a half, in other words, on this side of the wall of shame, if you do that, oh man, all kinds of bad juju happens to you. So that's why it's called wall of shame number 1. So we put our money into this, we invest, we hope that we're investing in profitable companies. And by and large, what we notice is that we started with some money, but we invested over time and we just watched the value of our 401k go up. Now, sometimes it goes down, but overall, we see that investments tend to yield return on investment. So here's why your 401k sucks. You get out here to age 59 and a half and you start to have a little bit of gray hair And right around age 55, 58 is when I find that people are coming to me and they're like, Leanne, I need a plan, right? Because we're starting to think about after age 59 what we're going to do with ourselves and how we're going to support ourselves. So we don't really know if our 401k is going to be sufficient, like what we've saved is going to be sufficient. We just by default invest and just kind of turn a blind eye to it, right? That's what most people do. But when we start getting a little bit of gray hair, we're like, we better figure this thing out. So somewhere between age 59 and a half, and let's just say like this is maybe 65, right? At that point, somebody's starting to think about like getting rid of their job and taking care of life and traveling and being with grandkids and all the things. So when we get out into this future, I get what's called the Hey Leanne phone call. I get them all the time. Hey Leanne, we've decided to pull the plug and stop working. We need you to give us $25,000 out of our 401k money so we can remodel our kitchen because we're not going to live in this house for the rest of our life this way. So when the Hey Leanne phone call comes, sometimes it's, Hey Leanne, I need $10, $15, $20,000 out of my 401k so I can buy a Harley. Depends on who's calling, but there's always the Hey Leanne phone call. So when the Hey Leanne phone call comes and somebody tells me I want to take the money out of my 401k money, I say the following. Are you sure? You're going to get hosed with taxes. And they're like, what? I'm like, you're going to get hosed with taxes. So that $25,000 that you want for your kitchen, you're going to pay full ordinary income tax on every dollar that comes out. Pay attention to that. We're going to call it ORD, ordinary income tax. Ordinary income tax is blah, 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 financial terms. It basically says the kind of taxes you make when you're working. So ordinary income taxes are the highest tax rates-ish that we are going to encounter. There's exceptions, but by and large, ordinary income tax rates are awful. So if your ordinary income tax bracket is 25% or you're 22% or higher, 30, 40%, that's a big deal. That means that $25,000 kitchen, I now need to actually take out of the 401k closer to $33,000. And when people understand that that 25 that they need net required me to actually turn in $33,000, that all of the difference between that is solely tax. That's all it is. And so this is why I call this the max tax line. You get your tax deduction out here, but when you actually start to use the money out here, you get hosed. All right, let's stop. I already know what you're thinking because people say it to me every day. People go, well, I'm going to have less income in retirement. And so won't my tax bracket be less? That's a great question. The answer is usually no. The answer is honestly, usually no. I do life with people, meaning I walk through their financial life with them. And what happens and what surprises people is when we get out into retirement, there's so many different sources of income, especially if the primary income source is this 401k. We actually sit in pretty high tax brackets, and the tax brackets keep shifting downwards. So you have to make less to pay more. So it's a fallacy of thinking and a bad planning technique to say, well, my plan is to have a lower tax bracket when I retire. Good luck with that. When I explain this to them, like, all right, yeah, I'll send you $25,000 net, but you're going to pay $8,000 tax on that. And that $8,000 is going to come out of your 401k right now, not later, not April 15, right now. They pause. They're like, is that the only option? Should we do that? That's like wasting $8,000. Yeah, no kidding. It's wasting $8,000. So what I find is that people between these two walls of shame actually don't want to use their money. They're kind of like, well, I guess we maybe won't do the kitchen remodel. And so people kind of downshift, and it's a shock to them. Now, it's not a shock to my clients because I teach this stuff. But when I'm inheriting people from another advisor, it's shocking. They're like, nobody's told me this. This is how it works. Yes, this is how it works. So they hold on to their money that they worked their whole life to save between age 59 and a half because they're like, well, I'm not sending that money to the IRS. Hell no, I'm not doing that. Okay. Well, the IRS is on to that, right? And so this second wall of shame is something that we're going to call RMD land, required minimum distribution. So IRS has figured out that people are doing this, and they're like, you're done. We gave you your tax deduction out here when you were young and working. And now you've kicked the tax can all the way down the road. And when you hit age 75, the IRS says you're done with the tax deduction. It's time to pay the piper. Let me put this in the language of the people. What that actually means is that when you hit age 75, you are required, you via me, if I'm your person, you are required to actually turn the spigot on and take money out of your 401k, whether you want to, whether you need to or not. And there's nothing you can do about it. And the reason that you have to do that is 100% so they can tax it. No other reason. Literally so that you can start to pay your taxes on that money. So believe me when I tell you, it galls people. They're like, you have got to be kidding me. I don't want to pay taxes on this. And you can't. You can't avoid the tax bill. It's coming. And P.S., it's completely dependent on how big the 401k is, or the max tax account. So all the dollars that are sitting in that account at all times are subject to tax. Let me explain it to you this way. Suppose you bought a house for $300,000, and then you lived in that house for 15, 20 years. And so the value of that home was started at $300,000. It's what you paid to make the investment. In financial speak, that's called cost basis. So that's what it costs to get into it. And then if you live in the home for 15, 20 years, the value of the home, or the fair market value of the home, might be as high as $600,000 or more, right? So it costs $300,000 to get in, and then the profit, or the unrealized profit, or the equity of the home is 300,000. So the whole thing is worth 600, right? So if you were to sell that house and say, I want out of here, I want this house gone. When you go sell that house, wouldn't you be pissed if the IRS actually taxed you on all 600,000? You wouldn't tolerate that, right? We all know, because we're grown-ups, that's not how it works. You have your cost basis of 300,000. The profit is 300,000. We don't have to pay tax on the cost basis. We pay capital gains tax on the value of the home, or the equity. I know some of you are like, well, not if you've 1030. I know that, but I'm just trying to help you understand the concept. We don't want to pay tax on the full $600,000. We only want to pay tax on none of it, but we're forced to pay tax on the profit, or the gain, right? Okay, now that you understand that, I want you to bring your attention back to the max tax line. Every single dollar that you defer out of your paycheck, your cost basis, every single dollar and penny that you have invested in this thing your entire life is subject to maximum ordinary income tax. So you don't get to do the thing where you say, well, no, just the profit. No, that's not how it works. And so when I see my clients not taking money in this period of time, we start to see, for sure, depending on market conditions, but just as a rule, we see those accounts continue to grow. And so at the point that we have to take RMDs, required minimum distributions, that can be really, really a lot of money for people. Sometimes I see it as high as $50,000 a year, and it might be $50,000 a year, 60, 70, that you don't even need, but you have to take it out just so it can be taxed. Can you see why people get cranky about this, right? Now, what happens when you're dead? Let's talk about that. So when I do financial planning for people, I let people live until they're about age 90, and then I kill them in my plan. And I need to do that because it's inevitable. Taxes and death are inevitable. So when you die, if all we've done is take RMDs, then what happens is your 401k dollars will actually transfer. Now, people, let's talk about this. Did you know that you can't, well, I guess you could, but you shouldn't plan on your 401k dollars or your IRA dollars going straight into a trust? Like if you're like, well, we did estate planning to avoid all those taxes. Like we went to that cool dinner at Luna and we learned all about it. I know you did. I've gone to those dinners too. And they're funny. They're hilarious. because it doesn't tell the whole picture. You can go spend $5,000 to set up a trust, but that doesn't change certain assets. And so your 401k dollars, your max tax dollars, will not be protected by the trust. They will pass outside the trust, and your kiddos are going to inherit those dollars directly. Well, the law changed about 2 years ago. And so now your kiddo has only 10 years to distribute and pay taxes on all of the money they inherit. Let me tell you a real story. I have a client who's 24 years old, and unfortunately, her wonderful father passed away, and she inherited millions of dollars. She was in school at the time, planning to go and do a master's degree. We had millions of dollars that was inherited. And I have to take all of those millions of dollars and distribute it to her, whether she wants it or not, so that she can pay the tax bill. So while she's starting her career, those RMD dollars come in and they're shown as ordinary income. And so she is sitting in a crazy tax bracket because of that. So when I tell you that your 401k sucks, it's for all of these reasons. Now, the solutions to this problem isn't as simple as don't do it. The solution to this problem is understand what your blend should be. And that's where Leanne comes in, or your financial planner comes in, where you actually need to learn, like, what is a healthy financial blend for my family between the max tax line, which is what we're talking about in this video. The next video, we're going to talk about the tax-free line. And the one after that, we're going to talk about the tax optional line. Most people need a blend of all of them. And so it's really smart to just take the few minutes that you've taken today to learn this first part, so that you can look at this with a creative mindset and solve a future tax problem with some creative planning today.